Okay folks, so here's just a quick overview of the user interface for Photoshop CS6. Now there's five main areas that we're just going to go over a recap for you when you're using Photoshop CS6. The first one we're going to look at is up here, your drop-down menus, which are pretty similar across a variety of different software packages you may have used before. So hovering over them, you've got a variety of different options, which quite a lot of these are greyed out at the moment, but it's just because we don't have a file or an image open to work with. So this is what you would refer to as being your drop-down menus. Underneath that, you have your properties bar. Now this will change depending on the tools that you have selected within Photoshop. I'll show you a wee bit more about that in a minute when we have a look at the toolbar. So this is your toolbar. There's two ways that you can view this. If I click this wee icon here, this gives you a bit more of a compact or condensed view. If I click this arrow, it expands it. It simply just gives you that wee bit more work area, but it's entirely up to you as to how you would like to have that organised or laid out. If I click on some of these tools here, you'll notice, as I just mentioned, that this property bar will change to suit the tools. Now you'll also notice that some tools have this tiny kind of small arrow in the right hand corner, and what that means is that if you hold down the left mouse button on one of these tools, there's a series of different tools that you can choose, and that would then repopulate the icon at the moment, and there you'll see your property bar change as well to suit that particular tool. You'll notice on the screen that when I'm hovering over this tool, this tiny kind of yellow box appears to annotate what the tool is at the time. That's a handy function within this software program. You find common across all Adobe products, which will give you an idea of what it is that you're looking for if you're unsure of the specific tools by name. If we jump over to the other side of the screen here, this is where you see all your floating panels, or how I like to call them, floating panels. These, again, similar, this expand panels icon here, similar to the toolbar, will allow you to flip between hiding or revealing your floating panels, and then collapsing them as well, just to keep them that bit more condensed and giving you a bit more workspace area. These floating panels can be reduced or increased in size. You can tab between having a variety of different floating panels open at the one time. You can also choose to close these if you prefer not to use them, if it's making your workspace too cluttered. So you can click close tab group, which will close that group of tabs, or just individually close each of the tabs within these floating panels. If these don't appear and you're looking to try and find some of the floating panels that you're perhaps wanting to use, you'd find these under Window, and they're all listed here. If I click on one, for example, Window opens up, and what I can do is I can just customize this by grabbing and popping them on as a tab to another floating panel. You also have an option here of the workspace that you have or that you could be using within Photoshop. Now this, everything that we've looked at so far is encompassing the workspace, and there's a variety of different presets that you could choose from, and you can also create your own preset workspace, which will allow you to, when you open up your files, have specific floating panels and whatnot open, perhaps change your background colour, etc. However it might help you or suit you when you're working with it. So the one last thing that we're going to have a look at within the generalised workspace is this area here, which is essentially where your canvas will appear, or any images that you plan on working with. And what I'm going to do is just go and file new, and what I'll do is just create a blank canvas so you can see that. Now, when you go to create a new file, this dialog box will appear, and it's extremely important that you read through all of the options that you have available to yourself before clicking on OK. Extremely important to begin with by naming your document so you know what it is going to be called before you intend to save it. Also, you need to think about your output purpose, what it is that you're planning on creating within Photoshop. If I click on the preset here, I've a range of different presets that are set up already within Photoshop, or I could simply create a custom workspace or canvas. I'm just going to use international paper and A4. Again, under size, there's a variety of numbers presets that I could use, going into letter sizes, etc., and going up to sizes of A3. Of course, if I wanted anything bigger than that, it would just be a case of creating a custom preset and changing the values, the width and the height to suit. You can change the measurements of these values again by clicking on this drop down list or drop down menu. You know, when working with images, especially if you're saving images off the internet or perhaps taking photographs, it may be worthwhile changing these to pixels so you've got an idea of the pixel rating that's going to be making up the image. Next, it's extremely important to set the resolution for your output. If you're planning on printing your images, the most common resolution that we'll be looking at is 300 ppi or 300 pixels per inch. If you're planning on using something for web-based graphics, you might want to change that to 72 pixels per inch for display for screen purposes. Similarly, you've got your colour mode here that you could look at changing between bitmap, grayscale, RGB, CMYK colour or lab colour. The two most common you'll come across will be RGB and CMYK. RGB, primarily used for on-screen graphics, your red, green and blue. It's an additive colour mode, and then you have a subtractive colour mode, which is cyan, magenta, yellow and key for black. You also have your bit depth here, which is relative to the amount of colours that are available to you within Photoshop, and you'll notice the difference between changing between RGB. You have available 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit colours, which is going to allow you to select and add alpha. CMYK, here you'll see you have the option between 8-bit and 16-bit, so it has its limitations on the colours available to you. I'm just going to change this to 300 and I'm going to change it to RGB, and I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to generate for me a blank canvas. You'll notice that things start to kind of maybe light up. My layers here will now appear the information and my navigator. And these are things that we'll look at in another wee tutorial, but there we go, that's a workspace. That's how to open up a file and understand and setting up a new document.